In a new series, NBN News is highlighting the efforts to rebuild the flood-ravaged Northern Rivers community. Here, Josephine, Shannon and Olivia Grace-Curran examine the trauma children as young as 3 are expressing through play. Preschoolers who experienced one of the worst natural disasters in Australian history are reenacting their families' frantic escapes from floodwaters in the playground as their young brains continue to process the catastrophe. Early learning educators in the Northern Rivers are reporting children between 3 and 5 communicating the February and March flooding with one another through art, craft and play. Assistant Director at Evans Head Woodburn Preschool, Kat Gillespie, said the event and subsequent displacement have had a huge impact on the age group. Read more. Lismore residents want the option to relocate their homes if they're not talking about the flood, they're often enacting it. They'll be knocking buildings over. Building up a tower, knock that over because my house got knocked over, Gillespie said. Or if they're playing, quick, jump in the boat, quick everyone, jump in the boat. The flood is coming, we do see a lot of that coming out in their play and that's how they're processing it, their trauma. At East Lismore Community Preschool, Director Sonia McPherson says it's a similar story. Children are often building walls around their pretend towns and taking their friends to safety as they evacuate from the flood. We see it weekly in drawings, in how they play. They will draw where the river is, where the river came to their nan's house, where their old house was, McPherson said. They talk about things that they miss that they've lost. Places that they can't go anymore. You'll have a child say, "When is my birthday?" and ask, "Is it going to flood again before my birthday?" Read more. Flood-devastated Northern Rivers schools face years before recovery. Half the kids at preschool lost everything in floods. Around 40 children, or half the enrollments, at Evans Head Woodburn Preschool lost everything in the floods. Many of them were rescued from their roofs with just moments to spare and, 7 months on, continue to call caravans and temporary accommodation home. This is the world that they know right now and it's made such a big impact on them, Gillespie said. It was hard, really terrifying for little kids. Their parents had to leave them on the roof while they went down to a neighbor's house. That's pretty harrowing when you're only 3 and 4. There's some really horrible, sad stories. Play therapy key as young children learn to process flood trauma. Play therapy has become a key tool in helping young children in the Northern Rivers communicate their emotions following the February and March events. Helping them to manage their emotions, helping them to understand it's okay to be anxious or sad or upset, and then how to work through that, Gillespie said. We're helping those kids to process through the play that they do. Parents are reporting behavioral and personality changes in their Northern Rivers children. Leanne Clifford says the disaster has changed her once fearless daughter. From a little girl that was so independent, sleeping in her own room wanting to do everything herself, Evelyn now has a very hard time leaving Mummy to go to preschool and wants to sleep in our bed every night, Clifford said. My little independent third child, we've now nicknamed her our Velcro child. She is stuck to me non-stop. Clifford says although their home did not flood, her family housed multiple flood victims and her children were living with people who lost everything. We tried to alleviate the children, seeing as much trauma as possible, especially the traumatized adults that were coming into our home. But they do see so much and Evelyn, quite literally, has been stuck to my leg the entire time. Read more. NSW residents warned to prepare for flooding as heavy rain hits. Toys taken to safety as children reenact flood disaster in play. Clifford says her daughter's priority when playing now includes ensuring her toys are out of harm's way. When Evelyn plays with her dolls and her teddies, she does ensure that they are playing on the high bunk bed, not the low bunk bed, Clifford said. My friend says her child, when it rains, paces from the front door to the back door to the front door. She said that's what she was doing when the floods came up to her home. The children are copying what we did. It's what they saw us do. The Northern Rivers Preschool Alliance, a not-for-profit organization representing state-funded preschools on the far north coast, saw 11 of its preschools go under in the disaster. President Sonia McPherson says buildings suffered varying levels of damage. Some were a complete loss, some were a partial loss, but preschools as non-profits. We don't have lots of finances to replace stuff. The funding we make goes straight back into the community. McPherson estimates 1,000 children between preschool, early learning and long daycare were subsequently displaced by the February and March disaster. They're 3 to 5 years old, developing humans soaking up everything. It will shape them forever, she said. East Lismore Preschool is temporarily operating out of demountables at Wairala Road Primary School. The flooding has seen a 15 to 20% drop in enrollments. However, even with a fall in numbers, their temporary space is proving a squeeze. We have got 101 children, and that is really difficult. It is really full and it is really crowded in a demountable, McPherson said. It's been incredibly tough because we've got about a third of the space in comparison to our old preschool. McPherson says the preschoolers often compare their old East Lismore site to their temporary site at Wairala Road. They speak often about at my old preschool we had X and used to do X. You're talking about nearly 40 years of handcrafted wooden resources lost, teaching resources, an entire library, she said. Northern Rivers Preschools calling for more assistance. The state government has offered up to $9 million to preschools in flood-affected LGAs with grants of up to $30,000. Preschools are grateful for the funding but admit it hasn't gone far in terms of rebuilding and are now calling for more assistance. It's been really tough comparatively to the primary schools and the secondary schools, McPherson said. There's still huge gaps of what we're missing in comparison to what we had before. But it's not just resources that have gone. We've lost some of our staff. They've needed to leave because they don't want to live in a flooded area anymore. McPherson says she is regrettably having to turn down local parents who are attempting to return to work post-flood. I get somewhere between 3 to 5 calls a day requesting preschool for children that I can't fill. Parents are desperate to return to work full-time or part-time and are unable to do so because there is nowhere for their children to go, she said. It's unclear when East Lismore Preschool will be able to return to its original site. We've only just had a building report. It's about 142 pages long worth of damage. We're estimating the middle of next year, McPherson said. Fears of what a third La Nina will do to flood-fatigued towns. The threat of the third La Nina is keeping the northern rivers in a state of constant anxiety. Every time it rains there's lots of children you have to support, McPherson said. 1/4 of our team lost their homes, so they're attempting to be strong and reassure kids that they're safe and okay while they're also trying to internally reassure themselves. They're just as triggered by the rain as the children are. The town hasn't come back. The sadness has just saturated the town. The sparkle has not come back. The sense of community is still really disconnected and people are sad. McPherson says it is a race against time to raise East Lismore Community Preschool and fears what another major flood will do to it. Water came in 152 centimeters into a building it had never touched before. If it happens again before we can raise the building, I have no idea what we are going